Alright, we're just going to jump right into it. This is the Viltrox 13mm f1.4 APS-C lens, and I believe that this is the best lens for content creators. And when I say content creators, I mean vloggers, head talkers, and TikTokers. So, take that. So obviously, this is the lens that I've been using in a lot of my videos. I usually just film with this. Instead, right now, I actually have my Tamron 17-70 because I only own 2 lenses currently, and we are going to step that up in the next coming videos. I have a lot of lenses that I want to invest in. I just haven't actually taken the time to buy them because lenses are expensive and other gear isn't. That's just me being honest. And I do apologize. I like to move my hands a lot, but it's probably helpful that I have something in my hands because this is going to help me not move my hands as much. And as I'm sitting here and I'm talking about this, I've noticed that I'm literally just shaking this lens. So man, I hope that I don't break something inside because that would suck. But anyways, I've had this lens for probably... How long have I had this lens? March, April, May, June. Probably about 4 months now. And I bought this lens my own money because I started this channel after the fact. I already own this lens and quite literally, it's probably one of my favorites. I honestly didn't even want to buy a zoom lens, but I know that I needed it for other things. But this lens is my favorite. I came from a Sigma 16mm and I thought that was super wide. And then I realized that the 13mm would be even wider. I wanted the Sony 11, but after watching some other reviewers on here, I don't know, I wasn't sold on the idea. So I went with the 13mm. The reviews seemed great. The price point was even better. So yeah, here we are. So this is the Viltrox 13mm lens. Obviously, mine is not brand new. It's, sitting in my hand, but it did come with these. Here we go. So it came with this cool, bag. It says Viltrox on it. I'm looking in the screen to make sure that I have this in camera, but this is the bag that it comes in. This is the lens itself. It does have a lens hood, it flips around. So, for the people that want to use that, here we go. Yeah, so that's that. Obviously, putting that back because, actually, we're not even gonna put it back on. So, front and rear, you have your lens cover. And then please do not get dust. You have another lens cover. Oh, actually, while we have this off, let's show this. So, this is what you'll get. This attaches to the sensor side. Here's a little bit of lighting. Maybe you can see that. That's the manual aperture ring slider. It does open and shut a little bit. As I say that, I'm even looking back now going, you probably can't see that, but hey, why not? What I was gonna say is under here, you can see there's a little USB-C plug that is for firmware updates. I personally have never used the firmware updates, mostly because I've never had an issue with this lens. However, I do know that some people have had issues, at least from what I've read online. I personally have never had one, so I don't know if it even works, but it claims to work. This lens features a manual aperture ring, so you can adjust it. I realized I'm showing the wrong side, so there you go. It does have an auto mode. That's typically where I leave mine, but if I'm filming talking head stuff, I like to do about f2.0. Nope, that's the wrong way. This is f1.4, and then as we slowly increase it, somewhere around here should be f2.0. The screen on this camera is not big enough for me to see. Eventually I'm going to get a monitor because I can't tell what I'm doing half the time while we're talking fast. Anyways, this is the manual focus ring right here. So if you want to, manually focus for those people, I'm not one of them. I leave it in autofocus. Usually it's autofocus continuous, but in this case, we're going to see what happens, right? That is the lens. The C stands for cinematic, I'm pretty sure. If it doesn't, please someone correct me in the comments because I couldn't be bothered to memorize that before I started filming. Okay, there we go. That is my traditional angle. Obviously, you can see more of my room. It's a lot wider. The widest that this lens would go is f2.8. I actually have a full video of this lens specifically on my channel, which you can watch here. Please don't watch it right now. You can actually come back to the video. So maybe at the end of this video, I'll link it. But yeah, this is a great lens, but it's not as good as this one, at least in my opinion. I'm a big sucker for prime lenses, specifically because this one is f1.4 all the way to f16. Typically, for talking head stuff, I like to leave it around f.2, f.22, f.24, somewhere in that range. This one is f.28, which is good, but it's not as blurry. I like having a little bit more depth of field, but right now this is a little too wide for me, so I'm actually going to put on the active steady shot in my Sony camera, and that's going to crop it in just a little bit. Okay, so now this is with the active steady shot on. Not every camera will have this feature, however, this is something that the Sony cameras do offer. I obviously film on a Sony a6700, as you can see in the bottom of the screen. I would point, but then I would remember probably in post that I'm pointing the wrong way because the image is flipped for you guys, because then it makes more sense, because right now on the screen, I can't read any of this stuff, but you guys can, so that's always a bonus. Anyways, as I was saying, f1.4 to f16, it's got a manual aperture ring. It also has a manual focusing ring. I leave it in auto for just about everything. The lens knows more than I do. Literally, the channel is called Novice Media because we're amateurs, but that's besides the point. This lens is also a fully metal composition. It is a little bit heavier than the traditional lens. It's 420 grams, which is 15 grams more than the Sigma 16. Personally, I don't seem to notice too much of a difference when I'm vlogging outside, which is a rare occasion, but it does happen every now and again. I do notice that there's a little bit more weight, but because the lens is shorter, I just hold it from the base of the lens and I let the camera have most of the weight hanging off my hand. So kind of like one of these motions where, like, you know, you're holding the lens here and then you have the camera back here. Eventually I'll get a second camera so we can actually like demonstrate some of those things, but for now you get the idea. Because it has an all metal composition, it does mean that obviously there is more weight. It is a little bit more prone to scratches on the finish, whereas like a plastic one obviously has a little bit more give. The metal one is a little bit more rigid. With that though, this lens technically isn't fully sealed. It is dust proof in the front lens cover, this right here that, you know, you guys can see my beautiful face. It does have a coating on it that makes it water resistant. It repels water for the most part. I've used this in the rain twice, and that's 2 times too many in my opinion, because I don't trust cameras outside in the weather. Even though the 6700 is technically water sealed to an extent, this lens, however, is not. So it's not waterproof. Nowhere on Viltrox's website does it say that it's waterproof, but it does say that the front of the glass is water resistant. It's dust resistant, which means that, you know, if you were to drop it, God forbid, in sand or dirt, it should be fine, but it's still one of those things like, I don't want to try it out because I don't want to spend the money again when I have to fix it. This lens also features an STM autofocus, which is amazing. I leave it in autofocus all the time. I do find that the autofocus works great, especially when doing talking head stuff like this. But however, sometimes, you know, when you're outside and you're moving around really quick, it doesn't want to pick it up. It does seem to favor faster motion more than it favors slower motion. So if I'm running at the camera, then it's going to pick it up a little bit faster. But if I'm slowly walking to the camera, sometimes it does go in and out of focus, which, you know, isn't always the best thing, but it always seems to find focus in the end. Something that a lot of other people have complained about, but I haven't really noticed it myself, mostly because I use wireless microphones 90% of the time, is that sometimes the focusing motors are a little bit loud. It almost sounds like a grinding where it's trying to find focus, but most of the time it ends up finding it pretty quickly. I don't know what some of the other people are saying where it's struggling to find focus. Maybe at night it tries a little bit harder, but again, you know, if you're filming at night and, you know, pitch black, that's kind of a you thing, not a me thing. I film in a mostly ideal environment. You know, we have our softbox right here. I have lighting in the background. We filmed other videos on this channel that you can see where I had the overhead lights on before we had lighting set up, and it always pulls focus fine. I do know that in my last video where we were reviewing 2 different kinds of mics, sometimes it was hunting for focus a little bit, but that was also camera error, not necessarily lens error. It was something to do with my settings. I was trying out something different, but it's not at the fault of the lens. So take that for what you will. Now, it does have a little bit of focus breathing, not the end of the world, but it is noticeable. I did have the Sigma 16, which I currently no longer have. I actually sold it, and I really regret that decision. I should have kept it because it would have been great to have 2 of these lenses to compare. So I'm actually going to pick another one of those up in the next coming videos so we can actually compare the 2 side by side. But I do remember vaguely that the Sigma had a better focus breathe than this lens does. Sometimes you notice it more than others, but that is something that you can compensate with your camera, so you can adjust how that works. I just kind of leave it straight out the box because I find it worked best, but you know, for different environments and different users, you may want to change that yourself. So obviously this is the lens in less than optimal lighting. It is finding focus. I mean, it's going to focus on me. As I can see here in my little viewfinder, I still have the focus ring around my eye. So, I mean, as we move around the room, you know, it's still picking up focus. It's still trying to focus on me. I actually didn't think about this before I started filming, but I'm just using my chair and moving around, which again, another pro of using a wireless mic, just saying, if you want to see that video, that one's also linked. But yeah, you get the idea. So this is literally just me moving around, picking up focus. It picks up focus pretty quick, but let's turn back that light on. Ooh, The sunlight, it burns. I feel like a vampire in here today. Now, obviously, one of the biggest things that I said is this lens is perfect for content creators. So kind of without further ado, we're going to take this outside so that you can see what it would look like if you're using this for vlogging, for TikToking, for something that isn't sitting here in a studio and talking heads. Maybe studio is a bold choice of words, but we're going to roll with it. I'm literally sweating so bad already because it is so hot outside. So this is the 13mm wide angle lens. This is literally just me walking around. This is probably my arm half extended. Ooh, as I keep moving it. Here's fully extended. So, I mean, you can kind of see that difference. You know, this is it full extension. This is if I were to hold it at like a comfortable level. So, I mean, you know, it works. I like it. I'm sitting here like staring at the screen. But yeah. So I do have the active steady shot on just because it does seem to help a good bit. If I were to turn it off, it would get a lot wider. So let's look at that. So this is, ooh, there's ants on my feet. So this is active steady shot turned off. Obviously the lens got a little bit wider, but you do see a lot more motion in the video. So we can always throw this into a post stabilization software like Catalyst Browse, like we're gonna do now. So this is kind of filming and then throwing it in Catalyst Browse. I'm gonna use a 10% crop just to kind of show off what we're doing. It's not the best of the best, but it's not bad. I mean, I like the cropping in Catalyst Browse personally better than the active steady shot. However, with this lens, because it is such a wide angle, we can get away with whatever, and especially using steady shot, so it's all done in camera. I think it looks the best, but maybe that's open to suggestion. If you don't have a camera with internal stabilization, you're kind of on your own at that point, because then you're really not left to doing a whole lot. You can always stabilize in post using like Premiere or DaVinci Resolve. However, that's more, it's, you know, resource intensive. I've noticed a lot of times when I'm just wanting to quickly stabilize one piece that I'm finding that it takes forever. But yeah, my arm is getting really tired from doing this. We're gonna switch, one sec. That's a lot better. We're also using f4.0 because f1.4, it is way too bright right now. We're a little overexposed. It is super bright. I mean, as you can kind of see, like, I don't know where the sun is. Oh, it's directly above us. Here we go. See if we can get some lens flaring. Come on. Oh, there we go. I see the sun. Is it gonna lens flare? But yeah, this is just kind of holding it like a vlogger would, or a TikToker, or someone that isn't me. I don't do that stuff, at least not anymore. We're gonna go inside. It's way too hot. I'm sweating really bad. Let's go. Holy cow, is it hot outside. With that said, we're back in the studio. We're gonna go over a few more things. Obviously, this lens is by no means perfect. It does have some cons. Obviously, one of them we mentioned earlier is it's not fully water sealed. Another one is it is kind of heavy. You know, you probably saw towards the end of our outside testing footage that my arm was probably getting a little shaky. So if your camera doesn't have internal stabilization or some kind of like active steady shot, or maybe you're not using a gimbal, you might notice that if you're holding it for a longer period of time that you will get a little, you know, fatigued. But that isn't the end of the world. You know, it's still a great lens. It's only 15 grams more than the Sigma 16, which in my opinion, 15 grams is not a lot. You know, I think it's not even an ounce. I don't know what the US measurement is, which is funny being that I live in the, you get the idea. Well, we're not going to talk about that. The other thing is, you may have caught it, you may have not caught it. I might have clipped it out, but it does kind of get some lens flaring. This lens isn't ideal in super bright environments. It is great for low light environments, you know, as you might have been able to tell earlier when I shut off the lights. It's not great in peak environments, so where the lighting is super bright. If you're filming directly at the sun, situations like that, it doesn't really work the best. It tries, but obviously, you know, it does have its fault. It's not the most expensive lens in the world, but it's also not the cheapest by any means. So kind of weigh that whenever you decide to make your purchase. The other thing, and this isn't a con necessarily, but I am throwing it in there, this lens is only meant for APS-C cameras. So for example, I've been talking about the Sigma 16 a lot. That is a crop sensor lens, but it also works on full frame cameras. I see a lot of people do it. This lens does not offer that because it is only made for crop sensor cameras or APS-C, whatever you want to call it. This one specifically is an E mount, but I also know it works for Fujifilms and Nikons. I think they also have a Leica mount. There's a bunch of different variations of this lens, but it's not meant for full frame cameras. So if you do put it on a full frame camera, it will technically work. However, in these corners, you'll get a lot of vignetting. That's not ideal. This lens already has a little bit of vignetting. It's more so than a lot of the other ones, so it's more than like an 11mm or a 16mm lens. It's not great, but I don't personally notice it, especially when I'm sitting here in a studio. It's more so when it's really bright outside that you do happen to start seeing it. But if you did want to use this on a full frame camera, that will get progressively worse. So it's not recommended, but it can be done, I guess, if you really need to, or if you're willing to crop it in. But at that point, you may as well just buy a 20mm equivalent for a full frame, because that's kind of where we're at, 13 times 1.5, and that gets you like 19.5 or 19.6, I think. So just round up, get a 20, or get smaller. I don't judge. So obviously, this lens has a lot of big value. It's got a lot of big potential. And obviously, you kind of want to know what the price is. So this lens retails for $460. However, I didn't pay that. I actually paid $380. And there's a whole debate online. There's all this talk about, white market and gray market, buying directly from reputable sellers and distributors like B&H or Adorama. I, in all transparency, bought this on eBay. I didn't think anything of it. Viltrox is a Chinese company, I believe. And so I bought it directly from China. I had it shipped here. It got here in literally 2 days. I wasn't stressing it. I've had no issues with it. All of the stuff out of the box was in English. I don't know. There's all this talk saying that gray market stuff isn't great. I guess it's up to you. It's a personal decision. I'm not going to get into that. Maybe that's a video for another day if you guys really want to hear more about that and what it means. For me, you can buy this lens for cheaper if you want to look around. If you look on Amazon, it's about $450. If you look on Viltrox's website, it's $460. Sometimes you can find these on sale for about $430. But really, why overpay when you can get it for less elsewhere? Maybe that's a really bad mentality. I'm all for supporting other local businesses, but where I live, there's not a lot of local camera stores. There's a lot of pawn shops, but that's it. And I'm not buying this stuff from Best Buy. So while this isn't the widest lens on the market, I have seen wider, and I actually have a lens in my Amazon cart that I really want to buy, and I want to put it on. I don't know that it's going to be a great lens, but it is a little bit wider than this one. It's almost more of a fisheye. I want to say, maybe I shouldn't say too much, but yeah, I really like the width of this lens. In some cases, like I showed you earlier, I have the active steady shot on because it's almost too wide for this environment. Maybe a 16mm would be better, but I want something that's short. This lens is probably about like 6 inches long. I would preferably like something shorter because my desk is maybe 25 inches deep. I'm sitting approximately 2.5 feet away from the lens right now. Here. We are sitting 33 inches away to be specific. With that said, it works. I personally like it. This is my favorite prime lens. Obviously, you guys may have a different favorite, but this one is mine. I highly recommend it to just about everyone. It can't do everything, but it can do more than a stock lens. So if you're buying those kit lenses that come with these cameras, they're okay. They have a power zoom function, which isn't great. I like a prime lens because even though this lens isn't perfect, if you have a good enough camera, so like, a 6000 series or an FX30 or whatever the other brand, so, like Canon, Nikon, etc., you get the idea. If it has enough megapixels and you need to crop it for a zoom, it'll do that. I film all these in 4K. I haven't had an issue yet with upscaling just a little bit for that effect. Like right now, we're zoomed in. I can't seem to tell a difference. Maybe you can tell a difference, but I can't tell a difference. Maybe that's just because I don't know what I'm doing yet. All that to be said, this lens obviously has stolen my heart, but has it stolen yours? Will you be picking up one of these lenses? And if you are, let me know in the comments below. If you liked what you saw today, be sure to like the video. If you want to stay up to date with what I'm doing and see more videos like this, obviously be sure to subscribe, hit the like button, hit the bell. I think that's a bell. I don't know what it is. I think it's a bell. We're going to say it's a bell. It makes a little dinging sound in my head when I click it. It doesn't actually make a dinging sound, but I don't know. I'm going on a rant. I'll see you on the next one. Peace out. Thanks for watching.